In the annals of African history, numerous figures have emerged as champions of resistance against European encroachment. Among the most remarkable of these figures is Queen Nzinga of Ndongo and Matamba, an African ruler whose determination, intellect, and unrelenting fight for her people made her a towering figure in the 17th century. Her story, marked by a struggle against the Portuguese, embodies a legacy of defiance, liberation, and sovereignty. Queen Nzinga, also known as Ana de Souza Nzinga Band, was born in 1583 in the Kingdom of Ndongo, located in present-day Angola. She belonged to the Mbundu people, one of the larger ethnic groups in the region. Her father, Gola Kalawanji Kiasamba, was the ruling monarch of Ndongo at the time, a kingdom that had developed a complex socio-political structure long before the arrival of European powers. The name Ngola was a title denoting kingship, a term from which the name Angola is derived. Under Ngola Kalawanji, the Ndongo kingdom had to contend with the growing influence of the Portuguese, who had established a foothold in Angola by the late 16th century as part of their broader imperial ambitions in Africa. The Portuguese sought control over the lucrative slave trade, and they viewed Ndongo as both an obstacle and a key to their expansion in the region. From an early age, Nzinga was exposed to the intricacies of politics and warfare, as her father frequently engaged in conflicts with the Portuguese, whose relentless push into the African interior destabilized local governance. Nzinga, known for her intelligence, physical prowess, and sharp strategic mind, quickly established herself as an influential figure within the royal court. Her father, recognizing her capabilities, often included her in important political and military discussions, an unusual practice in a patriarchal society. Her exceptional grasp of diplomacy and statecraft would become key to her leadership in the years to come. In 1617, Nzinga's brother, Gola Mbandi, ascended to the throne following their father's death. However, his reign was marred by instability, largely due to escalating Portuguese aggression. Mbandi proved incapable of halting the foreign incursions, and his decisions further alienated him from many within the kingdom. In a desperate attempt to restore stability and negotiate peace, Mbandi turned to his sister Nzinga, who had already garnered a reputation for her negotiation skills. It was during this period that Nzinga's diplomatic acumen became legendary. In 1621, Mbandi sent Nzinga to Luanda as his representative to negotiate with the Portuguese governor João Correia de Souza. The Portuguese had imposed a heavy yoke on the local population through slavery and forced labor, sending countless Africans to Brazil and other parts of the Americas. The negotiations were intense and complex, as the Portuguese sought greater access to slaves, while Nzinga aimed to secure a peace agreement that would allow Ndongo to maintain its autonomy and halt the exportation of her people into bondage. Nzinga's meeting with the Portuguese governor is perhaps one of the most famous moments of her life. When she arrived, she was expected to sit on the ground before the governor as a sign of subservience. Instead, Nzinga ordered one of her servants to kneel on the ground and serve as a human chair, symbolically placing herself on equal footing with the Portuguese official. This bold gesture reflected not only her refusal to be subjugated, but also her acute understanding of the importance of perception and symbolism in diplomacy. Through a combination of diplomacy and guile, Nzinga secured a temporary peace agreement with the Portuguese, halting the hostilities and giving her brother's kingdom a brief respite from the constant assaults. However, this peace was short-lived. Following her return to Ndongo, internal strife and Portuguese duplicity continued to plague the kingdom. In 1624, Gola Mbandi died, allegedly by his own hand, although some accounts suggest that Nzinga may have played a role in his death to secure her position as the ruler. Whether or not she was involved in her brother's demise, Nzinga ascended to the throne, adopting the title of Ngola. From that moment forward, Nzinga's reign would be defined by her fierce resistance against the Portuguese and her efforts to liberate her people from slavery. Queen Nzinga's leadership represented a sharp departure from her brother's conciliatory approach. Rather than appease the Portuguese, Nzinga mounted a fierce military resistance. Understanding that Ndongo on its own could not defeat the Portuguese with their superior weaponry and resources, Nzinga formed alliances with neighboring African states. She also reached out to the Dutch, who were the Portuguese's European rivals in the Atlantic slave trade. By playing one European power against the other, Nzinga created a geopolitical strategy that bought her time and weakened Portuguese influence in the region. Nzinga's resistance to the Portuguese was multifaceted. Not only did she engage in direct military conflict, but she also took steps to weaken the Portuguese by undermining their supply of enslaved Africans. She provided sanctuary to those fleeing enslavement and established Matamba as a safe haven for runaway slaves and those seeking refuge from Portuguese rule. Under Nzinga's leadership, Matamba became a powerful and respected kingdom in its own right, with a strong centralized government and a formidable military force. Her embrace of runaway slaves as citizens further cemented her status as a liberator and protector of her people. For nearly 4 decades, Nzinga led her people in a relentless war of resistance against Portuguese domination. Despite facing overwhelming odds, she managed to retain control over her kingdom and frustrate Portuguese ambitions in the region. She fought not only for the freedom of her own people, but also for the broader cause of African independence from European exploitation. Her leadership was marked by tactical brilliance, unyielding determination, and an unwavering commitment to the sovereignty of her kingdom. Even as she aged, Nzinga remained actively involved in the affairs of her state, continuing to engage in both diplomacy and warfare. Her efforts were not without challenges. The Portuguese, recognizing her as a serious threat to their empire, launched several military campaigns aimed at capturing or killing her. At times, Nzinga was forced to retreat into the mountainous regions of Matamba, where she employed guerrilla tactics to outmaneuver the Portuguese. Her military acumen earned her the respect of both her allies and enemies, and she became known throughout the region as a fierce warrior queen. Queen Nzinga's defiance also had a profound impact on the broader African resistance to European colonization. Her success in forming alliances with other African kingdoms inspired other leaders to resist European domination. Nzinga's ability to hold her ground against the Portuguese for decades sent a powerful message. African kingdoms could stand up to the European powers and retain their independence, even in the face of overwhelming force. By the time of her death in 1663, Nzinga had secured her place in history as one of Africa's greatest leaders. Although the Portuguese eventually succeeded in dominating Angola, Nzinga's legacy of resistance continued to inspire future generations of African leaders. Her refusal to capitulate to foreign powers and her dedication to the cause of liberation made her a symbol of anti-colonial struggle not only in Angola but across the African continent. Queen Nzinga's story is a testament to the resilience and strength of African resistance in the face of European imperialism. She stood as a bulwark against the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade and fought tirelessly to protect her people from subjugation. In the modern era, Nzinga has been celebrated as a national heroine in Angola, and her life and legacy continue to resonate with those fighting against oppression and for the freedom of their people. The African queen who freed slaves and stopped the Portuguese was more than just a ruler. She was a revolutionary. Through her indomitable spirit, she challenged not only the Portuguese Empire, but the very notion that African people were destined to be subjugated. In doing so, Queen Nzinga left an indelible mark on the history of Africa and the world.